What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to week 3 of the monthly Mayhem Dragbolt Challenge. If you're not familiar with this series, Matt from the Scale Builders Guild and myself have challenged each other to try and take an Axial SCX10-ii Deadbolt and make it go as fast as possible with a handful of rules. Those rules in general are keeping the stock track width or less, and the stock wheelbase have to keep the stock body. And then there's just a few other little things in there, but those are the main ones. We post new videos for this series every Wednesday and a vlog update on Friday. If you watched the last update video that was posted on Friday, you will have seen that I took the car out and destroyed it out in front of the building here, doing some little runs up and down. And it needed a lot of work. But the thing was, I didn't have a lot of time in between when I posted that video and this video to actually do that work. But I did get it done, and yesterday we did do more speed runs, and we'll get to those results later. But we'll go over some of the changes and some of the thought process that went into this vehicle over the last week. Now, up to this point, what I've mainly done is try and get my drivetrain sorted, which kind of gave me a baseline, and then just put power down, see how it performs. The last time I ran it, I found better results with the Sweep Racing tires. However, on a proper surface, these Proline 8 scale primes did extremely well, and I think that they're on there to stay. As far as aerodynamics, the only thing that I've done up to this point is lower the body and add a rear wing. I have not touched front aerodynamics at all. Overall aerodynamics of the vehicle was what I intended to work on this week. However, ran out of time, had to fix the car, and just try and get some runs in. So I've had to put off aerodynamic improvements another week. Hopefully in the coming week, that will be a little bit of what I'm focusing on. Now, as far as outside appearance of the vehicle goes, it's basically the exact same as you saw it last time, other than just some more scrapes and things like that from a few little testing incidents, but beyond that, just minor cosmetic differences. So what we're going to do is we're going to pull off the body and get underneath. Underneath, to the outward eye, again, most things are going to look almost the exact same. The major item that I changed before testing this week was I updated the design of the skid plate to add more strength through the area where the transmission actually bolts through. Before, I had a corner there where there was an easy stress point between the corner, the screw for the transmission, and the chassis. Ended up breaking it right through there. But with this new design, I don't suspect that that's going to happen again. All of the parts on this so far that have been 3D printed are 3D printed out of PLA. Now, I do have PETG, which is a stronger material, and if I need it, I'll absolutely go to that route. Instead of going to a different material, what I had done at this point was just increase the number of perimeters or shells that I'm printing with. Perimeters and shells give you more strength than just cranking up the infill ratio. If you're not familiar with 3D printing, basically it means 3D printing prints solid layers around the outside and then kind of puts a hatchwork in the middle. You can increase the density of that hatchwork, but if you just print more solid layers around the outsides of the part, usually that yields you a higher strength. So I re-3D printed all of the parts that I broke, got those installed, and yesterday we went out and did some testing. Before I get to the actual numbers of that, during testing, did end up with a couple of issues again. One is I broke that rear upper link mount again, and it was just something that I didn't have time to reprint it with a higher perimeter value or density or anything like that. I just reprinted that part because I was leaving town. I just hit print on the printer and walked away. So since the testing period last night, I've actually redone the design with a number of upgrades, and I think this will be my final version of that part. What you'll see back there now is that I've got my battery installed, and it's got some proper Velcro straps, and underneath of those Velcro straps there's a proper battery tray. Now underneath the battery you'll see that aluminum battery plate that I was talking about. That piece, what I did is I took and I designed it to integrate into that chassis cross member. It screws into that cross member in 6 different places. 4 in the midsection and then 2 up front. And these 2 up front are actually the same screws that go all the way down through and capture my upper links. So this battery plate actually becomes a stressed member. It should add a lot of strength to that back portion, and I think that this will then become something that really improves the performance of this rear of the chassis. Now, during testing, I had some heavy front end noise happening. Grabbing it and spinning it by hand, I could feel that chunky would have been an understatement to describe how those front gears felt. And I knew they were bad after the very first run of, testing this vehicle. So it was no surprise that they had finally given up. But when I did open them up, I did not expect to see what I saw. Those gears had huge chunks missing. The pinion gear itself is still machined, while the ring gear and locker is a pot metal or sintered gear setup. And the actual machined pinion gear was really chewed up from, trying to spin over those nasty looking sintered gears. But I had taken huge chunks out of the sintered ring gear, and then I had actually split the locker part of the ring gear and locker assembly from the ring gear. Cracked it all the way through. When I took the axle shafts, they fell out in multiple pieces. And with those two pieces broken in half, trying to keep everything concentric would have been almost impossible. So I'm sure that led to more noise and more binding and more just terrible performance. So after discovering that, disassembling the axle, cleaned all of the old grease that was out of there because we had just packed some white lithium grease in there. And I installed a new Vanquish AR44 machined gear set with the 6 locker screws. The 6-bolt style gears and lockers are a big upgrade in strength, and the machined gear sets should definitely mesh better and hold up better to, the abuse of acceleration and deceleration as well. Before putting it all back in there, I am using some Swepco 101 moly grease, which is a super high temp. It's not going to melt. It gets stringy if it gets hot, but it doesn't melt. It'll stick to those gears. Should help keep temperatures lower, and hope it keeps wear in check as well. But now it's time to get into the actual performance report from yesterday. So again, Tony Mazza helped me out. He went and scouted a new location, found a brand new subdivision that was going in with fresh asphalt and no homes on it yet. So no traffic, no delineators. It was just a perfect location, but we didn't have that much time before the sun was gonna go down. So we had to kind of hustle to get in our speed runs. If you remember from last week, our previous record was 47.6 miles an hour, really trying to get to that 50-mile-an-hour mark. Now, other than just changing the parts that I broke and taking off the Sweep RC wheels, tires, and throwing back on the Proline Primes, ran it up and down this new location, and we were able to finally break that 50-mile-an-hour mark. Able to put down a speed of just over 51 miles an hour. So already a great start. Just able to crack over that 50-mile-an-hour mark was a huge just milestone for me with this vehicle, especially with no changes from the last time. Just almost a 4-mile-an-hour bump just with a proper location. So after putting down a first run, confirming everything was working all right, making sure all the parts were, staying in place, nothing was loose. Did a couple more back-to-back runs just to try and get the most out of the current setup. We're able to increase that 51-mile-an-hour speed to 53.9. So we were able to squeeze a few more miles an hour out of it, just trying to get the best speed run with holding that trigger as long as I can. Even with the gyro in this vehicle, it's not the most stable thing. The track width is narrow, the wheelbase is short, it's a brick shape, trying to cut through the wind. It's still a handful, but the new road definitely helped a lot, gave us a little bit more freedom, and we were able to really, hold the throttle down. I was pinning the throttle for as long as I felt like I could, and 53.9 is all I think the car had in it with that gearing. So I had a 16-tooth Mod 1 pinion in there and a 42-tooth spur gear. Brought it back into where we were, took out that 16-tooth pinion and threw in an 18-tooth pinion, giving us a significant bump in the rollout. Felt like that should really help us, try and squeeze a little bit more out of the car. So again, took it back out on the street, ran it up and down, just over and over, trying to just squeeze anything we could out. Well, $56.5. Oh, we're creeping, but
Ooh, we did get a new top max speed though.
Did we?
57.8.
We were able to creak out a couple more runs that increased from there. 56, 57. And then it was getting down to the wire, our, kind of what we felt like was probably going to be our final runs. Still on the same battery pack from the very start. Never changed it out to try and get more voltage or anything like that. And took it out there. As good a pass as I think I've ever had with it. Able to hold the throttle, really let that motor wind up to the maximum RPM it had with that new gearing. And we were able to put down a 59.0 run. Not quite that 60 mile an hour mark yet. So close, so close. And that's all the car had with the setup that we had. So in a last ditch effort to try and break that 60 mile an hour mark, what we thought we would try was removing the rear wing. Maybe it was adding some drag. We don't have any aero on the front, and maybe that was, lifting, or who knows what. It was just worth a shot. So 2 screws is all it takes to remove that rear wing, and we head out, line up at the end of the street, come ripping down, and the rear end gets all kinds of loose, unstable, have to abort to keep it on its wheels, get it all the way down to the bottom end of the street again, and start heading back to us. Again, trying to come up to speed, and the rear end actually starts to lift a tire as it starts to pitch sideways, and I missed a fire hydrant by less than 6 inches at almost top speed. Was extremely lucky not to just completely waste this car in that attempt. So that was all we had for the night. 59.0, as much as I could squeeze out of the car for this week. I wanted to so badly break that 60 mile an hour mark, but it's just not there. Now, rewinding a little bit, we have to remember that at some point during those runs, that front gear set completely wasted. So I don't know when it happened for sure. I don't know if it's during those last couple of runs where I was trying to play with the rear aero or not, but for certain, at some point, that front gear set was affecting this vehicle's performance. And with the new Vanquish gear set installed in there, I feel like it might be to that point now where I maybe am able to crack that 60 mile an hour mark. There is a few other things to note, is that I think that I am at the top of this vehicle's speed ability with this gearing again. Like I said, I have a 42 tooth spur gear in there and an 18 tooth pinion now. That's as much as I can cram into this setup. However, Tony did have an MIP 39 tooth spur gear. So got that from him. We're gonna throw that in, and I'm gonna leave the 18 tooth pinion gear on there for now. That does now give me more room to pinion up even further. Some other concerns that I have is that this motor in ESC may be seeing its limits also. So what I mean by all this is that I think the use a bigger hammer approach that I've been taking is getting close to the end of its limits. I've got another hammer to throw at it, I think. But beyond that, I think I'm really gonna start looking into some of those things like the front air dam possibly, maybe cleaning up the air underneath of the body, allowing the air to exit the rear of the body a little smoother as well. There's several things in here that I need to really address. But I think that as much effort as they're going to take, we're going to see incremental increases in speed from them. We're not going to see these 10 mile an hour and better, improvements in a week. And I think this is where Matt can start to kind of close the gap that I've pulled on him. Now I'm not going to have these big jumps. I don't feel. I think I'm going to just be fighting for miles an hour. At this point, I feel confident that I can break 60 miles an hour. I think 1 mile an hour beyond where I'm at is going to be controllable. But going beyond that point, I think I'm going to see, exponential increases in difficulty. And I also can tell that it's just on a knife edge between getting a good mile an hour and trying to find all of the parts and pieces that were under the body shell. I've got big goals again for next week. So next week, big updates, big upgrades, and a lot of work ahead, I feel. I hope you guys are enjoying this series as much as we are. This is an absolute blast for, just an oddball project that I've never tackled before. It's something new and refreshing and just a lot of fun. And if you guys are enjoying it, make sure and hit the like button, subscribe if you're not already, and turn on that notification bell. I can't wait to see Matt's upgrades this week. He has not showed me what he's got going on, and I'm definitely anxious to see what he is going to do to try and catch up a little bit, because from the messages that he and I have been bouncing back and forth, it sounds like he's made some big jumps. So make sure, go check out his video. I'll link it in the description below as well. And just so all of you remember, I am uploading all of my 3D printed parts onto Thingiverse. I don't have the most recent ones on there yet, but I will update those. So if you have any desire for any of these individual pieces for whatever project you may have, they'll be there for you to find. So with that, guys, thanks for watching. Make sure and watch Friday's blog update, scale news on Monday, and next week's Dragbolt update on Wednesday. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one.